Good evening, and what is up, Razorback Nation? We're back at you with episode 70 of the Hogs on the Hill podcast, your go-to podcast for an in-depth dive into all things Arkansas Razorbacks. And we're brought to you by our lovely friends over at Razor Pigs. Looking good never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas-born brand, brings some serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep their natural state with pride. Found it right here at home, and now run by a Razorback-loving family. Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool. So go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us. And our friends over at Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. And if you are in Northwest Arkansas, you can check out the Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get Scarlet Letter and all its various flavors on tap, as well as their new hard iced teas. And it is another week, another getting close to Razorback football. And we actually have basketball this weekend, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But how's it going tonight, Hobbs?
Yeah, it's all right. Just maybe a game we can win, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. Praying the defense can actually cause some turnovers or do something this week.
Well, it looks like it's going to be another wet weekend. You had the rain delay and, weather last weekend. It looks like it's going to be the same way this weekend. So who knows? But, no Austin tonight, but we're going to still rock and roll. Like I said, we're going to talk football with a fellow Auburn podcaster. We're going to talk basketball. We're going to talk about just a few updates on coaching search and some things going around in college football and college baseball. Even big news there. So loaded show tonight. But we're going to get kicked off with talking about this weekend's game with Auburn coming to town. Auburn 3-4. But we have our friend Blake Lane joining us from the Auburn at the voice of college football, covering all things Auburn Tigers. Welcome to the show, Blake. How's it going?
There we go. I'm doing great, guys. Glad to be here. Glad to talk Auburn and Arkansas. A matchup of two teams that are, they're fighting for their first SEC win, and I kind of feel like they're going in different directions, though. I feel like Arkansas has a little bit of a spark, some energy over there with Bobby Petrino being the interim and that offense and your quarterback, Taylor Green. I feel like you guys have a little bit more on your side. And Auburn, I feel like, yeah, it was 4 straight losses, and they were all ranked teams, but it's how you lost. And so I think that's what has the fan base down in the dumps. I think that's why you're seeing the Hugh Freeze, the media stuff come out, and the heat be turned up in the kitchen on Hugh Freeze and people calling for his job. So Auburn's got to try to find a way, man. They got to finish a game this Saturday, and I know Arkansas is going to be fighting and trying to get their first dub in the SEC.
Yeah, so walk us through, like you said, kind of, you guys start out the season pretty well, close, competitive game early in the season. And, the confidence with Baylor, get the win. Confidence is high with Jackson Arnold. You beat Ball State, you beat South Alabama, and then, starting with Oklahoma, things start to go south. Kind of walk us through, what happens there and, what do you think could be some of the reasons for, the downward spiral, if you will?
Well, I think you come out in week 1 on the Friday night at Baylor. You ran the football. Dave Aranda, I don't know what he was doing, but he did not want Auburn throwing it. And so Auburn just stuck to the ground game, and you run all over Baylor. And so everybody thought this offense was clicking. And then you get Ball State, and then where it really started to kind of turn was the second half of the South Alabama game. And I know everybody looks at that box score and they say, oh, well, it was 31-15. Auburn kind of cruised. You got outscored 7-3 in the second half against 1-6 South Alabama. So you struggled to move the football through the air against South, and I think that's where it kind of started to really, come to a head, as I guess you could say. And then you go to Oklahoma, you feel like you get a crucial turnover, and you feel like you go up on the road 7-0. And it didn't go your way. But the thing is, Auburn fans want to say that officiating did this and it hurt us here and it hurt us there. But Jackson Arnold missed a couple throws to Cam Coleman in that football game where if you hit those, Jackson Arnold's walking out of that stadium saying, hey, I come back to Norman, Oklahoma, and I got a dub. And I think you're looking at a completely different football team, but that didn't happen. So then what does happen? It carries over to Texas A&M where you can't move the football once again. Your only drive to score in that football game was because Xavier Atkins gets a pick and returns it all the way to the 2-yard line, and then Jackson Arnold has a keeper. It's just, in my opinion, it's bottomed out for Hughes' offense and the chances. And then you get Georgia where you got them on the hook, and once again you got another play that is controversial and you can't bounce back from it. You put up 20 yards of total offense in the second half, and then you have Missouri where, once again, it sounds like a broken record, guys, that Hugh Freeze has a lead late in the fourth quarter, and you can't hold on to that lead. Your offense goes out there, you go 3 and out, you punt to Missouri, they go score to tie it up. You get the ball back, you stall, you punt it away, and you go into overtime, and you end up losing in double overtime. It's just, in my opinion, it's a losing culture. And the biggest thing that I hate about all of it is Hugh continues to say the word close. We're close. We're close. And I just need a little bit more time. Okay, well, Jeff Lebby has been at Mississippi State. This is his second season, and he's already got a top 15 win on his resume. Arizona State was a playoff team last year, guys, and he got them in Starkville, and they made a play late in the fourth quarter to win that football game. And Hugh Freeze is yet to do that at Auburn. And I'm no disrespect to Starkville and Mississippi State, but they're not the program that Auburn is. And that's where I sit with it, is you have brought top 10 recruiting classes to Auburn, and you're struggling to make a bowl game. That's where it's all went south for me, is his offense, man, because Auburn's defense is really, really tough, man. And it's aggravating. It's aggravating on the Plains, guys. It really is. It's to have that much talent on a roster, and 5-7 last year and looking like it again this year. That's a fireable offense.
Yeah. I mean, and you look at it too, it's like I said this before we jumped on, but it's like, right now it feels like Auburn and Arkansas are 360 of each other. You talked about those issues you've had. Well, Arkansas the same way. It's like we have this, Ferrari of an offense that can go score, and then, a couple games back to back. It's incredibly ironic how you lose in the same way, same manner, same time of the game with that late fumble against Ole Miss. You had Ole Miss on the ropes there. You don't fumble, you probably go down and score to win the game. Then the following week you go to Memphis, same thing. You let them come back, but you're driving down for the winning score, and you fumble at the 5-yard line and you lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story of fumbles for Arkansas, but kind of the same thing there, except, you've got this offense, we can score the points. But, as Austin likes to say, our defense is a wet paper bag. I mean, everybody's running through it, putting up, points and, running, we can't stop by anybody with a run. We struggle getting pressure on quarterbacks. And, you got to think it's like, you tell me, like, looking at last week, it was a 3-point game with Texas A&M. You tell me you put up over 500 yards of offense and you score 42 points and you don't win the game. That's just like incredibly bad defense. And, at this point in the season, you look at it, there's nothing you can do personnel-wise. You have who you have, so you've got to try to figure out something to make it work. And I think that's where, Arkansas fans are sitting at it. It's like, we know we can score to win games, but if you could have your defense it's like, I tweeted out one point in the game last week, just one stop, please. That's all we need is just one stop to turn things around, and we couldn't get it.
It's one score for us. We can get the stop. That's the thing for Auburn is this week. You're facing a mobile quarterback that's got a cannon of an arm. He can make all the throws. I think the progression of Taylor Green from last year to this year, I think he's one of the better ones in the country. Just watching the growth from the year, right? And I think Auburn plays really well against mobile quarterbacks, but Bobby P is going to throw everything at you, and you don't know when it's coming, and they're going to score. And that's my biggest fear in this game is, Auburn holds they're holding teams to, I think it's like 12 points lower than their season average. But guys, I just if it starts to turn towards where Arkansas is scoring once, then they score twice, how does Auburn keep up? That's my biggest fear. It can't turn into a shootout.
Well, it can't. It's his defense.
I don't know that.
I haven't seen him stop anybody yet. So,
but they can stop Auburn because
I hope you're right.
I tell you this, this 2 years ago, LSU, their defense, I mean, they couldn't stop a nosebleed, and we were going down there to Baton Rouge, and it was hyped up that it was going to be a shootout because LSU's defense couldn't stop nobody, and Jaden Daniels was going to score all over ours. And I think that they beat us like 48 to 15 or something like that, or 48 to 19 or something like that. And I'm not saying Arkansas is going to score 48, but I get that feeling of, yes, Arkansas's defense is bad, but our offense is just as bad. Like, it's bad. And what's crazy is y'all are going to see it. I don't know how much Auburn y'all watch, but you're going to see it when something's working with Hugh Freeze. When Jeremiah Cobb busts a big run, he'll go 15, maybe 30 minutes without touching the ball again. And, it's the same guy. It's the same guy where last year, Jarquez Hunter, he ran for 300 yards on Kentucky, and then the next week he got 8 carries against Vanderbilt, and you lose 17-7 at home. Like, it's just even though Arkansas's defense is bad, Auburn's offense is just as bad. So it could be a rock fight. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and you look at it too, the storyline kind of going into this week for you guys is, not only, it was announced after last week, you lose your starting center.
Yep.
But then, the question this week is who's starting? Jackson Arnold or Ashton Daniels? And what I want to ask from an Auburn perspective is, why not Deuce Knight? You've got an extremely talented freshman, but he's not even getting a chance. At this point, like you said, nothing's really working. So why not change to something else?
So I really think the Deuce thing, Hugh brings up about the red shirting in the 4 games. And if you put Deuce in now, then he loses his red shirt for the rest of the year and all this stuff. I don't know how much I really buy that, because Billy Napier did it with DJ last year, and it kind of worked for Florida. It got him a little momentum. But we put Deuce in against Ball State, and I know it was with second and third team. I understand that, but it just looked like first snaps, true freshman, a little gun shy, maybe a little deer in the headlights. He did have 2 good plays but it just looked like, hey, maybe the game's a little fast for him. And that was against Ball State. So I'm not sure if Hugh wants to run him out against an Arkansas or, a Vanderbilt that we play in the future, Kentucky. I think you're looking towards the more experienced guy with Ashton Daniels, who's played P4 football. And I think Jackson Arnold's going to start, just from what Hugh Freeze has said this week in the media, that Jackson's going to start one more time. But if you need a spark, Ashton will come in off the bench. And I think you guys will find this actually funny. He said, we're going to play this game to win. All right. Why weren't you playing the other 4 to win?
Right.
Oh, man.
So I'm telling you, when Hugh Freeze gets behind one of these bad boys, it's the worst thing you will ever hear. He is awful behind a mic. It's bad. It is bad. And we talked about it earlier about the 9 out of 10 time thing. Like, to me, that's the dumbest thing you could ever say. And I just, Jackson's got to put together 4 quarters of football, guys. He's been putting together 2 quarters, 3 quarters. But when it gets down to crunch time, it's been, hey, I'm delivering this ball to Perry Thompson's feet, or I'm 2 windows behind Cam Coleman on this slant. It's just been bad. It's been bad. And so you talk about the offensive line with Connor Lew. I mean, Connor Lew was getting mocked in late first, early second round of the NFL draft this year, and you lose him. And now you've got a kid that's still supposed to be playing high school football in Kel Ellis. And he has gotten reps against Oklahoma. He played on the road at Oklahoma when Connor went out for, a couple drives. And then he played this last week when Connor tore his ACL. The only thing with Kel Ellis is he's a competitor, but he's got to get his snaps down. He's going to get beat, but he's going to compete. And I'll give him that, man. Is you can tell he's a freshman, but he's going to compete. He's just got to get those snaps down because it throws off the rhythm to that mesh point. And you could tell last week it kind of had Jackson and Jeremiah Cobb a little off. And so there's just a lot of things with this Auburn offense, man. There's too many questions going into Saturday.
Yeah, this feels like one of those come down to field goal kind of games. Because Auburn and Arkansas always play them crazy games, and you never know what's going to happen. And so hopefully, I remember a couple of years ago the officials kind of got in the way of the game. That was crazy with Bo Nix. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But
yeah, we ain't gonna talk about it.
Oh man! But speaking of this year, yeah, it's like both teams, like Caleb was saying, they kind of have reverse identities, and but both also are the same because they both have played so many close games and haven't found a way to finish them. So one team's going to find a way to finish a game this Saturday, and I think whoever does, it gives them momentum the rest of the year.
Well, that's what I was talking about before we got on here. Is it kind of feels like, and I'm not trying to just come on here and bash the team that I love, but I'm going to call it how it is, right? And it feels like Arkansas has a shot in the arm. There's a little energy over there, and you're playing for a guy that I don't care what happened in the past, y'all. He had Arkansas rolling, and I truly believe everybody deserves a second chance. And that man, I know what he can do in that program because I remember when back in the 2010s when we were dog fighting Arkansas and Auburn, and I remember the talent that he had on those rosters. I think with the NIL era, he could do real damage at Arkansas. And so it feels like you guys have a shot in the arm, where with us, it feels like a big question that's asked is, has Auburn lost the locker room? Like, are these guys still playing? You see the fight out of the defense, but I'll tell you one thing with the offense, I see a whole lot of this right here on the sidelines. And it's, well, it didn't go my way, so I'm going to go over here and pout about it. And body language can tell a lot, and it speaks volumes. And I'll tell you another thing that Auburn hasn't been good at And that's special teams, fellas. It's brutal. It's been a disaster. Your punter is bad. He can't flip the field. Kicking is just been atrocious. I know Alex and all the health problems that he's dealt with. I understand it, but eventually you got to start making some kicks. And if he's not physically able to go out there, then you got to try somebody else or just start going for it. Because at this point, I don't think Hugh Freeze has anything to lose. So pay attention to that Saturday. That could be a big part of the game where if it's 4th and 4, and Auburn is in Arkansas territory, instead of kicking a field goal, they might just go for it. And
if he loses this one, do you think he's gone?
I do. I'll be honest with you. I think he should have been fired last week. Auburn, and I know some fan bases feel a certain way about their team. I feel very strongly that Auburn is, one of those teams that in the Southeastern Conference, they've been to Atlanta multiple times. They've won SEC championships. They've played in national championships. And for you to start 0-4 every year you've been here in the SEC, I'm sorry, fellas, but
it's like that's unacceptable.
It is, and it's not to the. We had a senior captain leave the team a week and a half ago, and he said, he didn't live up to the standards and expectations of the program. And I'm like, man, that's rich. That's crazy for you to say, because you haven't lived up to the standards and expectations of the program either. So
if they do pull the trigger, who do you want? Who's your preference on who would replace them?
Yeah, what's your top 3 big board if you had
top 3? There you
go. Man, that's tough. Because really and truly, I think Auburn sits in a bad spot right now. I think John Summerall would be a really good hire, but I don't think Auburn can go out and get that home run hire right now. Where where they last time they were in talks with, it was either Lane or Hugh. And everybody was like, oh, man, we're getting a home run with either one we get. We're getting a home run. With this time, I think it's going to be a little bit, down, because you have Florida open. You have Penn State open. You could possibly have Baton Rouge, Louisiana open. We'll see. They seem a little fed up down there. And so I would probably go Summerall. And then I'll keep it short and sweet. I think you could go Summerall, Golish at South Florida, or I think you give it to DJ Durkin. You promote DJ Durkin, your defensive coordinator, to try. The reason I say DJ Durkin is to try to retain the roster, because those kids are playing hard for him. And then you wouldn't have to basically do a total rebuild. And once again, it's been 5 years since Auburn's been competitive. You wouldn't have to really just, tear it all down and try to build it back up. So I think James Franklin's out. I don't think he would come to Auburn. And so I just, I've seen people say, oh, well, go throw the bag at Lane again. And I'm like, Lane's not going to coach at Auburn. I think that ship has sailed. I think Lane Kiffin wants to be the next coach at the University of Alabama. And I don't think that's why he come in the first place. And so,
right.
Is that a Bo Nix jersey behind you?
It is, man. Bo Nix, baby.
How did you feel when he went to Oregon?
I flew 2,600 miles to Eugene, Oregon to watch him play against Caleb Williams. I did.
Okay. That's awesome.
I did. I'm one of the guys where I was frustrated with Bo's play while he was at Auburn. Some guy, you didn't know what Bo you were going to get, but also I don't think it was his fault. I think Auburn was just not right in certain areas, especially the offensive line, receivers. We could go on about it.
Well, because he was there when it was Harsin, right?
First year, his freshman year was Gus, and then they transitioned. And then 20, he was with Gus again, and then they fired Gus during COVID, and then they went to Harsin. He played a year for Harsin and then bounced. So I I was one of those guys where, you know, I wasn't mad that he left. I was like, hey man, you got 2 years left. Go get it done. Like, you've given everything to Auburn. We know you're a legacy, and I just want to see you be successful. And I know it's probably not going to happen here at Auburn because the word's out about your career at Auburn. And so just go be great. And I think you went to the right situation. And now he's absolutely killing it in the NFL with Sean Payton. So
right. Well, and so, thinking about as we go back to the coaching search, a name I heard on the radio this morning, they did talk about Summerall, but another name that I thought was interesting just because of the connection that they said, well, I don't know if necessarily Auburn wants to do that again, was they threw out the name Rhett Lashley because he comes from the Gus coaching tree. What's your thoughts on that? I know he's been linked to Arkansas just because he has a lot of ties from Arkansas as well because he's from here. He was a backup quarterback at Arkansas, was a GA under Gus when Gus was at Arkansas. So just a lot of ties for Arkansas. But that's the name that they threw out there because they're like, oh, well, he comes from the Gus coaching tree.
So the Rhett thing, I feel like a lot of Auburn people want to get away from that. You know what I mean? That Gus Malzahn tree, the era. They don't want the offensive minded guy to be the head coach. Auburn kind of wants to shift towards. You hear a lot about maybe going the defensive route, and I don't know if Rhett would come to Auburn because I know they're having a little bit of a down year this year at SMU, but they are sitting on a gold mine out there with Texas money. And, they were once a prominent program and they got the death penalty. And I think in the NIL era, they could potentially be something. So I don't know if he would come to Auburn just off of that, but I think he runs a great offense. I don't know. I think it's time for Auburn to kind of switch it up a little bit.
Right. And, it's like they usually say, in coaching searches, teams usually go opposite of what they have or what they got rid of. Like you mentioned the defensive route. Well, historically, Hugh Freeze was an offensive guy. So now you flip it. Kind of, that's the weird part for Arkansas is because you had Pittman, who wasn't necessarily a defensive guy. He was an O-line coach. And so you have Bobby step in and that's the thing. I think, a lot of people that talk around Arkansas essentially is, right now it's Bobby's job to lose. And I mean, in the introductory press conference with the AD, when he was named interim, that, one of the questions asked her AD was, what's going to be kind of, what are you looking for? As you evaluate Bobby for the job. And, the AD said it's not going to necessarily come down to wins and losses, but how much does this team, grow, fight, look competitive. And I think you've seen that, you lose to Tennessee and A&M by combined 6 points.
Yep.
And, the offense is rolling. They're trying to do what they can with this defense. And I think the thing is, with him, and I think I saw it. Who was it? Barstool may have said it. Nostalgia is one heck of a drug that everybody's like, oh, let's run it back with Bobby. And I don't hate the idea, but also in a sense, it's like you kind of want to see some fresh faces, fresh blood around the program. But like you said, with this NIL era, you look at what Bobby did this year. He built this offense. You got Taylor Green back. And then we had to bring in all of our starting receivers are new. Our running back, Mike Washington transferred in. So, our offensive line majority of it's transfers in. So like they built this offense from the portal, and you see what it's doing. You've seen, like you said, the growth of Talon this year. A crazy stat I saw was this year's offense is on pace to potentially break Bobby Petrino's 2010 offensive records. And you've only won 2 games. But on top of that, there's only been 8 other teams in the history of college football that have averaged more yards per play than this Arkansas offense. It's like they're averaging 7.27 yards per play. And out of those 8 teams, they've either been a national championship team or had a Heisman winner on that team. So, the offense is clearly clicking. If this team is 6-1, you're talking about, Taylor potentially being in Heisman talks. But since the team's doing so badly and he's having a heck of a season, it's not getting talked about. So, and so I don't know. It's weird. I would love to see Bobby come out and win a couple games. It's not the worst option to me. I don't want to go the coordinator route for a new coach.
You just gotta keep him out of the Harley Davidson shop.
Right, there you go.
You just gotta keep him out of the Harley shop.
Way and
if he can hand them out for NIL, instead of riding them, he'll be all right.
Right. And so, the other names thrown out, I think it's for a lot of the openings this year, I feel like it's going to be the same set of names for a lot of schools.
Yep.
Just because that's typical of how it goes. James Franklin. You got it for Arkansas. I look at it as you at least have to make the call. Like, I feel like Penn State was dumb for firing him to begin with. But, you got to at least make the call and see. And then Summerall's a hot name. Rhett Lashley's a hot name. Golish, like you mentioned. I'm trying to think who else had been mentioned on that list. And you mentioned it. People are kind of wanting to get away from the identity of Malzahn and the offense and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like Arkansas can't get out of the past. And like every time our job's open, people's like, oh, go hire Gus. He doesn't want to come here. And I don't know why people don't want to let it go.
Well, he's getting talked about a lot here because, they say that they fired him at the wrong time. And, I don't know. Auburn fans, part of them say, he needed to go. And then the other half of them say that he got fired at the wrong time. He was the best thing that we've ever had. And, the old saying is, you don't realize what you had until it's gone. And, he was the offensive coordinator in 2010, and he made Cam Newton look like the greatest thing that we've ever seen. And then in 2013, he took us to the national championship with a defensive back playing quarterback. And we choked that game away where we should have beat that star-studded Florida State team. And then in 2017, he was he was a game away from the college football playoff. He beat Georgia and Alabama in back-to-back weeks and goes to the SEC championship game. And, Carry On gets hurt and they lose that football game. And then 2019, if you look at it, I know this is crazy to think about. I don't like doing this, but if you had the 12-team format, Auburn went 9-3, and you go back and look at their losses in 2019. Who's to say, Auburn could have been a 12-team college football playoff team, So it's like you fired a guy in the middle of a pandemic, and all because he stepped up to the mic and he said, hey, we went 6-4 during COVID. That's a pretty good season. And they axed him. So
right.
I know some people say bring Gus back, and it's I don't think anything else for Arkansas though. I've been saying that Bobby Petrino, I've been saying that for a couple years, man, that he deserves that job back, and I hope he gets it. I hope Arkansas don't beat us Saturday, but I really do hope he gets it back and he can get Arkansas turned around. Right. I'm not one of these SEC haters either, where I just like, I want to see these programs that I think, I grew up on Darren McFadden and Felix, and I remember the Mallets, and I want Arkansas to get back to competing again, as well as Auburn.
Yeah. Well, it's like you mentioned, you go from Gus, who, had you consistently, that 8, 9, 10 win area year in, year out, always gave you a chance to beat Alabama year in, year out, which is always a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like you said, sometimes, like you said, you don't realize what you have until it's gone. And, looking at it for an Arkansas perspective, I think for Bobby P to come back, it's the thing with him. I'll say he's made it very clear he wants the job. He loves Arkansas. He regrets everything that happened in the past. And then on top of that, he's clearly shown over this season, and especially the past few weeks, that he's still got the offensive, genius mindset, if you will. It's not past him. He still can come up with plays, put up points. And to your point, you give him the NIL funds, you give him the job, and you say, all right, you go hire the best DC you can. Here's your budget, say $2.5–3 million. Go get you one really good DC to handle the defense. Give them the NIL funds to rebuild the defense out of the portal, because that's what you're going to have to do year one. Is you're going to have to rebuild out of the portal and then start recruiting. And so, if you look at it that way, because you're not going to have to really make any hires offensively, because Petrino's going to remain, play calling duties. I don't think you really change up much of your staff. And so, it's not a bad game plan, and there's probably plenty worse options you could. But the thing with this one, and I've said it before, is, especially for the program, but especially our athletic director, you can't miss on this hire. It's like, you've struggled so much. I feel like compared to basketball, you had Chad Morris that ran the program into the ground. And then, you brought Pittman on that kind of leveled everything else, leveled it out, got you back to a, I call him the Mike Anderson of football, because he kind of got you there but couldn't get you over the hump. So is Bobby P or somebody else going to be that Eric Musselman that kind of elevates you to the next level? And yeah, I mean, nostalgia, if it tells you anything, the crowd that we had on Saturday for an A&M game that was rainy, gross, cool, and the way the season's been, incredible atmosphere. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what direction Arkansas does end up going, but I hope it's the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's with Auburn is, you haven't done it yet. It's been this bad, and you keep. I mean, there was an Auburn podcast that come out and said that he's safe no matter what till the end of the season. That Auburn's not going to do anything until the end of the season. So, it's just kind of mind blowing that. That's why I just think that Auburn's kind of in a downward trajectory right now. I try to give the kids some life, man. Maybe a new voice or something, and then once again, you can't miss on this hire. So Auburn's got to kind of get back on track, man. But I'm not feeling too good about Saturday. I'll be honest with you.
Well, I was about to say, you look at some of the details about the game. The thing that's interesting to me, you saw earlier in the week, and when Sunday the lines drop it, you guys were favored 1.5 as the road team. Now going into Friday, it shifted to 3.5 in favor of Arkansas. So
Wow.
Don't know if it has part to do with injury, but I was going to mention a while ago, you guys lose your starting center, but then
Yep.
he gets a little bit of a break, because now Arkansas is not going to have Cam Ball. It's, Rock of that defensive line who lines up on that interior due to a concussion sustained in practice this week. So, your young center catches a break there, because he's going to be going against some young guys as well.
Yeah. Another thing about the Auburn offensive line is the rotation, the constant rotation. And Kel Ellis is coming in. And like I said earlier, he can really compete, and he's going to get beat every now and then. But it's been a constant rotation. We get 2 drives here, our right tackle moves to right guard, and then our left tackle comes off the field, and you put your 6th man at left tackle, and then you're sliding your left guard to left tackle, and it's just been a constant rotation for Auburn's offensive line. This is an offensive line that's much better run blocking than pass blocking as well. So I'm nervous. I'm nervous about that because this line is giving up 26 sacks, and the protection on Jackson Arnold. Now he has been the cause of some of that, but I just feel like Arkansas's defense could look really good Saturday, and Auburn's offense could stall. Man, I don't like Auburn in this matchup. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting one because it's going to be another wet, rainy game. And who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if kickoff gets shifted. It's one of those, 11:45 potential kick. It's supposed to be raining all day Friday for the most part here into Saturday morning. So, we moved 2 hours last week from 2:30 to 4:30 kickoff. So wouldn't be surprised if we potentially saw a shift in kickoff time this week.
Yeah, I do think if Auburn, if it rains and everything, and you got to play in the flood, I think that might help Auburn in just a bit because you don't really have to worry a whole lot about tailing. And I think if it's flooding like they say it is, I think that would limit him just a little bit. But I think that could swing it in Auburn's favor a little bit. But I'm just not. I don't trust the Auburn offense. You got to show me. Right.
Same. I think that's our Arkansas's perspective with the defense. You got to show me. So it should be a fun one to watch Saturday, just to see, between these two teams who can get that first SEC win. Like you said, if Arkansas gets the win, is that kind of the nail in the coffin for Hugh Freeze? And, does that help Bobby's chances at, showing that he can at least make something out of, like you said, a shot in the arm of where this season was headed, especially after the Notre Dame game. And so it should be interesting. But before we let you go, quick question for you. Flip into another sport. Your thoughts on Bruce Pearl deciding to retire right before the season?
Man, there had been rumblings about it. I wasn't totally shocked. I think Steven was the safe play. I think I'm not mad about that. I'm not mad about him getting promoted. He's been in the program. His dad's been letting him coach games, like Auburn going to the Maui Invitational and winning it. His dad let him coach, there's been halves of him stepping up in SEC play and calling, certain things. So it's not like he's just totally unprepared. But to lose Bruce and what he's done in Auburn basketball, I'm sorry if y'all can hear my dog. To lose Bruce, it's to not get him one is what hurts the most, because I feel like what he's built at Auburn is a power, man. And I'm just excited to see Steven if he can carry it, but I'm also excited to see if Cal can get it done at Arkansas, because I think that is I think Kentucky messed up, and I think Arkansas is about to start rolling on the hardwood.
I was about to say there's some high expectations going into the season, much more than last year. You've got a deeper roster. You've got, it's year 2 of Cal in the program. He's getting some of his guys in there. You got DJ back. You got Carter Knox back. You got these talented freshmen, Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas. We've got basketball tomorrow. We have an exhibition game against Cincinnati tomorrow night. And, with the way football's went, everybody's like, all right, there's a lot of high expectations, high hopes for basketball. So it's time to get rolling there. And, the non-conference schedule Arkansas and Cal set up for themselves is it's going to be a fun one to watch, but it's a really tough schedule because you have your opening game at home versus Southern, one of those easy beginning games. And then game number 2, you head to East Lansing to take on Michigan State and Tom Izzo. So like you're starting real fast. You get one warm up game, if you will, and then you're taking on another top tier program.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing in the SEC now is you see more and more of that because the league is so good, man. And then you play your non-con and you go up against the greats, and I think it prepares you for that tournament run.
Yeah.
And
Right.
the league is just so deep now with all the great coaching. I mean, Auburn, Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, um, Florida. Yeah, hell, I miss the defending national champions, what Todd Golden has created there. But man, I think I think basketball season is going to be fun, and I wouldn't be shocked if the national champion come from the Southeastern Conference again because let's be honest. Let's be honest. With this whole football stuff with the Big Ten winning 2 straight national championships and all this, they want to say that the Big Ten is this and that. The SEC is the best conference in college sports in every sport, not just football, not just baseball, not just basketball.
Yeah,
Everything, they're the
absolutely.
best. And so I think
Right.
SEC basketball is going to be great again.
Right, because you look at it, traditionally SEC football has been where it's at. Basketball, it used to be, heavy dominance with the ACC, Duke, North Carolina, of course. But, like you said here recently, Oates at Alabama, Musselman, what he did at Arkansas, but then, Cal and, just the history behind Kentucky, Bruce at Auburn, you know, a lot more competitive. I mean, look at Chris Beard at Ole Miss now. So, you've got a lot of strong competition there. And then,
Mississippi State's got a good coach.
yeah. And then, I mean, you can't talk about college baseball without talking about the SEC to begin with. So,
Not even
yeah,
close.
it's just a well-rounded. And then, for Arkansas over here, one of the track capitals of the world, right up there with Oregon. So, like, yeah, I mean,
I've seen that track stadium in Eugene, and that is insane, man. That is insane. But by the way, y'all brought up college baseball real quick. Uh, I want so bad for Auburn to win a national championship in college baseball, but guys, Arkansas has got it. You got to get the curse out of
you're
there.
preaching to the choir.
You're cursed.
Don't get
There's
me
just
started on that, man.
That
man,
was the whole debate at the end of the last season.
oh, poor Dave, man. Such a great coach, such a awesome program, man. Got to get y'all one.
I was about to say he's the GOAT Hall of Famer. That's the one thing missing from the resume is national title. Like, and we were talking about it too. You think about, it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like in the SEC this year with the news of Vitello leaving, Florida's coach Strickland stepping away from the program. It's going to be a little bit different in the SEC this year.
Yeah, and Tony B, he built something great. I just didn't like how they carried themselves a whole lot.
Man.
And then the whole situation at Florida, man, I got to hear more about that story, but I still think the SEC is going to be dominant as ever on the diamond.
Of course.
Yeah, Mississippi State should return to the to their they've always been good. They got a legendary coach now too, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up and let you get out of here, Blake, is there anything else you want to hit on before you get out of here?
Yeah, all I'll say about Auburn is I really hope that they can just put a complete game together. And if something tragic goes on, like a bad call, just don't have a blunder and let it lead to multiple plays of having your head down and try to bounce back and have a winning mentality. But I'll be honest with you guys. I think Arkansas wins this game 24-21. I think you guys get the dub. I don't trust Auburn's special teams, kick return, punt team, kickoff team, place kicker. I just don't. That's the reason I got us at 21 points, and I don't expect us to get score a whole lot because of our offense. I don't trust it. I I haven't seen Auburn put enough out there for me to just say, well, Arkansas's defense is bad, so Auburn's going to light them up. And so I hope they do, and I hope I'm dead wrong. But I'm just going to go with the better quarterback and the guy that has grown and made huge steps forward in his game. And I'm going to take the guy that has his offense rolling, and that's Bobby P. So I think Arkansas wins this game.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here, you want to let everybody know where they can find you and all your Auburn content at?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Auburn at the Voice of College Football. I go live every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I recap football, basketball, baseball, and anything Auburn you want to talk about, I'm willing to talk about it. So you guys can catch me there, and I appreciate y'all having me on here.
Hey, we'll have to reconvene during basketball season.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it'll be here before you know it. So
yeah,
we appreciate you jumping on with us, and
absolutely.
Let's see what Saturday has in store for both of our teams.
Yeah, man. War Damn Eagle, and I will definitely keep in touch with you guys.
Sounds great.
All right, y'all.
We'll see you. That was Blake Lane of Auburn at the Voice of College Football joining us to talk about this matchup this weekend. Great insight there. It is going to be a fun game to watch. I think one of the things to watch is going to be, like we've hit on, these 360-degree teams, these opposites. Auburn with a decent defense, Arkansas with a really good offense.
Yes.
But on the flip side, the wet paper bag of a defense versus, an Auburn offense that can't score, that struggles with play calling. So, I like you said, Hobbs, it might be one of those games where it's a rock fight, and who can chunk the biggest rock at that point. So,
yeah, and if it comes down to the field goal, like I'm saying, and based on what he was saying with their kicker, I trust ours. I know he struggled against Ole Miss, but he hasn't missed since.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see the kid get a chance to make a huge field goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember posting, because I wasn't on the show last week. I remember posting it was the Tennessee game where we didn't kick a field goal and went for it on fourth down.
Right.
And it drove me crazy because it's like it's the third quarter with 4 minutes left in the third quarter, and we're down by 3, just tied the game.
Right.
And we went for it and we didn't get it, and it drove me crazy. And then we ended up losing by 3. So I just and then I know Twitter it was kind of half. They agreed on the call to go for it, and half was like, yeah, we should have kicked it. And I'm just like, you just got to,
right.
You got to get the guy on the field. He's number 1 kicking recruit in the country for a reason. Like, he ain't missed since. He's got the leg.
I will say, in hindsight, you look at it that way, but I will say in other terms, it's nice to see, some aggressiveness on fourth down in that situation. Like, it's always situational football, but after all the years, nothing bad about it, but with Sam and, not really being aggressive on fourth down, to see Bobby come out and take some chances. And, the biggest thing to me was talking about that game was on fourth down, we actually lined up under center instead of shotgun. Crazy concept, but so, this offense seems to be rolling. It seems like these guys still have fight. They haven't given up. And, I think that's what Blake was talking about is, shot in the arm. These guys are still playing hard. And, you've been in every game this season other than Notre Dame, which is I put an asterisk by that game, but every other game you've either won or been really close in it. And, I said this last week, it's got to go your way at some point. You got to have a regression to the mean the season, with all the fumbles and the way things went really down. We actually come out play a clean game last week, no turnovers. You're this close. You're a fourth down stop away from potentially getting a winning drive where you wrap up the running back in the backfield, but then a second lunge forward and he gets the first down away from potentially having a game-winning opportunity.
It's the second time that's happened where somebody's just drug our defense across the first down marker, and a play that we needed the defense to push a guy back.
Right.
So
I mean, at some point you feel like the ball has got to roll Arkansas's way. And, this weekend and, the next 2 weekends is Arkansas's best chances, in my opinion, to get a win for the rest of the season. Just because after these next 2 weeks, yeah, you get a bye week, but you got to go to Texas, you got to go to Baton Rouge, two tough places to play. Then you come back home and play Missouri, and we always know how that's a weird series that Arkansas hasn't had the best luck in. So, hopefully in a rainy weather environment this weekend, Arkansas can get it done, and you can give Bobby P his first win and potentially, help him secure removing that interim tag.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. That's really the only thing that's got me hopeful for the rest of the year is the chance of Bobby, redeeming himself and having a chance to be the actual head coach moving forward. Because I wouldn't mind it. I mean, the offense is just so good. It always has been anywhere he's gone. So for me, it's just like, if we're going to go and hire somebody else, why not bring the guy if he wants it? Why not go for a round two with the guy that's honestly been one of the most successful coaches you've ever had. So
right, especially recently. I mean, you can look at Houston. What not was for successful. You talk about Frank Broyles, Lou Holtz, some of those successful coaches, but in the modern, most recent times, that's Bobby Petrino.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the program as a whole has not been too great since he left. You have John L. Smith take over after he leaves. That was just terrible. And then you bring in.
Don't say the cuss word on here.
Oh, I know. You bring in Brett Bielema. He gets you to a consistent spot, but can never win those big games, get you over the hump. You decide to get rid of Bielema, and you're like, okay. Then you bring in Chad Morris. I don't know. There's not much to say there. That was just a terrible idea. Sam comes in and steadies the program. It's like, all right, now let's start an upward trajectory, whether it be Bobby P or somebody else. But again, you can't get this hire wrong at all. So, and Bobby's a guy that wants to be here. He's made it. He's voiced it that he loves the state. He wants to be here, and it's hard to ask for more than somebody wants to be here, but also has the resume that he does. Been there, done that. Especially been there, done that at Arkansas. Got you to an 11-win season, a Sugar Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen Arkansas do what they've done under Bobby Petrino, under anybody else. Yeah, Houston Nutt has some decent years with McFadden and Felix Jones and Peyton Hillis were there, and Matt Jones. But I mean, Petrino goes to a BCS ball game, which is the equivalent of going to pretty much the Final Four,
right?
In today's world of the college football playoff. So, it's hard for me to say let's go get somebody else when you don't know who that's going to be. So,
yeah,
I'm all about keeping Petrino here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see what we do. So, with that, we'll jump over. I mentioned it earlier. We have basketball tomorrow. With the way this football season has been done, it's not over. There's some optimism with just everything with Petrino and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk about optimism and expectations through the roof for Arkansas basketball, year 2 of Coach Cal. We've talked about the players that he's got, that he's brought in. You look at your returners, DJ, Carter Knox. Brazil's been playing the best basketball of his career, end of last year, into reports from fall camp going into this year from Cal. You got the star-studded freshman class of Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff. You've got Isaiah Sealy. The transfer portal class. You got Nick Pringle, Malik Ewan, some really top talented guys out of the portal. And, Cal seems to be going back to what he's doing at putting a team together, working the transfer portal. I think a lot of people would agree that this team is underrated this year. Coming in at preseason number 14, I've seen several national analysts, talk about how they feel that that's low. I saw somebody say that it was laughably low. Should be a top 10 team. With
Absolutely.
With you have the most, if one of the most, if not the most, offense returning with as far as the guys you have coming back. Not to mention Billy Richmond too. Love to see him play last year. It's going to be fun to see what rotation we have to start out with this year. That's going to be what I'm looking for to get an idea of this tomorrow night is what does your rotation look like? What's that starting five going to look like? Are you going to have DJ and Darius at your 1-2, Carter Knox at your 3, Brazil at your 4 with either Ewan or Pringle at your 5, or do does Acuff come in to sub for DJ and then you start Malik Thomas at your 2 because we very clearly know he's a shooter. I went to the primetime at the Palace event that Arkansas did, and man can shoot the basketball. And so, what's your rotation look like? How many guys deep do you go? We have a deeper bench and roster than what you did last year. So, there's a lot of optimism and hype for this season, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, football season has been so disappointing, not only college, but NFL-wise for me. You go and you're excited about football season, and it's really disappointing. You have 2 months worth of really bad football, and it's like, man, I want to feel that itch again for sports. And then
you got that light on the other side of the tunnel.
Yeah, and then you got basketball coming around. I just love this time of year. You got basketball starting. NBA tipped off just a few days ago, and then you got college basketball coming here. I mean, tomorrow we got an exhibition, but I mean, we play real basketball November 3rd, so that's right around the corner.
And then before you know it, we'll be talking college baseball and
baseball too. You got some of my favorite TV shows that are about to be coming back on the air. So it's just exciting. You got the holidays coming up, man. It's just an exciting time of year. So weather's turning colder outside, so things are starting to look a little bit more, on the up and up. So, but yeah, I mean, this roster, like you said, top 15 team, probably should have been top 10, no doubt about it, but that's okay. They can sleep on us because with our schedule, man, we're going to make some moves real quick.
Right. I was about to say, you go through the gauntlet that is the non-conference into the gauntlet that is the SEC. So it's like there's no breaks, you got your handful of, quote unquote, gimme games in there, but those are far and few between all the Power 4 teams you're playing last year's entire Elite 8. You think you got Michigan State on the road, you're playing Duke at a neutral site, you're playing Houston in a neutral site, you're playing Texas Tech down in Dallas. It's just this is a big time non-conference schedule.
Right. And that schedule doesn't do anything but help us. It can't hurt us.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I'm solely thinking about March and how they do the seeding, and it's all about resume
schedule.
I mean, I've seen 18 win teams, maybe 19 win teams be a 4 or 5 seed in the tournament just because of their resume. So, and what I mean by that is we may win half of the non-conference games and lose half of them, but we're still going to have really quality wins because of that schedule, that gauntlet.
Right. You're looking at that quad 1 and 2.
That's what I'm saying. None of those losses will hurt us. So if we do go like 6-4 to start the year, I don't want everybody to start freaking out. Oh God, we're playing the best of the best. Like we're not going to win every one of them, but it's going to be fun to see. And then another important thing to me is making sure you start the conference play right, which bearing injuries. I think we can do that, especially with the schedule we have before we get there. I think it's going to prepare the team a lot. And that's where, I watched rewatched the Texas Tech game the other day, and man, we're one blown lead and one lucky shot that Texas Tech hit. And yeah, it was a lucky shot because he shot that thing from almost half court and kind of just rolled around and went in to tie the game. We're those two things away from going to the Elite Eight. And
Right.
so, I mean, and you got 4 of those players returning, and then the talent is what I get excited about the returning players, no doubt about it, but it's the incoming people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best we've ever had, period, step on this campus that are going to be freshmen on this team this year. That's how good this team is. So I'm just really excited.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I'm ready to see that tomorrow. And like you said, we'll have a couple exhibition games tomorrow versus Cincinnati here in Bud Walton, and then Monday you play at Memphis in a classic like charity exhibition game. You know, Cal going back to Memphis. You're playing Penny Hardaway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the storylines there, and so it's going to be fun. And then, you know, you jump over to some, you know, we talked about it before the news with college baseball, and we kind of hinted on it as we were talking to Blake. But, you know, your initial thoughts on, you know, seeing Tony V head into the majors to take over the storied program that is the San Francisco Giants. And then, you know, of course, Strickland stepping away from Florida. You know, how do you think that impacts not only the SEC, but, you know, potentially for Arkansas this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, Vitello, it was one of the things where I first saw the story a few weeks ago that he's linked to the Giants. And, you know, whenever you see something like that, it's not really a rumor. It's almost set in stone.
Right. It's like where there's smoke, you know, there's
especially when you're talking about an MLB clubhouse, you know, and it's really just at the point where they're working out the details at that point. So I know a lot of people, when you read Twitter, they're like, this ain't gonna happen. This ain't gonna happen. Well, it did. And it was the first time this ever happened. So, I mean, congratulations to him. That's a big time thing to go from college to the MLB, the first ever coach to do it.
With no prior professional experience.
Right. Because, I mean, it's completely different than MLB. You don't just recruit and you have a general manager that does all that. All you do as a manager on a team is you set the lineup and you do the daily practices and stuff and watch over the team. You don't do anything as far as putting the team together. So his life maybe got a little bit easier from that perspective for not having to recruit and stuff. But I don't know. I didn't know that he desired to coach in the MLB, but I mean, good for him. A lot of people are saying this sets the stage for when DVH retire, he comes back home. I'm not really sure if that will happen when that day comes. Hopefully it's not anytime soon, because I want to see DVH get one.
Right.
But when that day happens, we'll see what happens. But, you know.
Well, it's like I've seen that same thing across social media, but I also saw something, I don't know how true it is, that apparently after taking this job, Vitello or some of his friends had said that he had talked to DVH and said, hey, you know, don't worry about me. You know, Matt Hobbs is your guy to kind of be your successor. So I don't know. I don't know how true any of this is.
You know, another thing is, if he goes to the Giants, which have a huge history too when it comes to baseball, they've won quite a few World Series, and not just in the two they're but when you look at it, like if he goes to the MLB and has success, he's not leaving to come back to college. That's not happening. So regardless of, you know, where, if he wanted to go to Arkansas or not. But now if he goes there and they don't do well and he gets fired, then that's a completely different situation. But we'll see. The question is, what happens to Tennessee? You know, their roster, from what I read, is you can't transfer. You can enter the portal, but you can't go to a D1 school at this point in the year, because rosters are finalized at this point after fall ball. So it's one of them things where if they wanted to leave, they'd have to go play like community college or something like that.
JUCO, something like that.
Yeah. So it's one of the things where the roster will probably stick together. Tennessee will probably still be good, but they won't have that kind of attitude or whatever that they may have it. You never know, but we'll see. Tennessee was not any kind of relevant until he got there. So I don't know if they go back to not being relevant. They're probably good for a year or two and then go back. We'll see what happens with them. And then as far as Florida's coach, man, that was a shocker to me. I didn't see that one coming. They've had quite a lot of success in that program under him. So I don't know what's going on with him. We'll see it as the months go on. If it gets closer to January and he's still not back with the team, then maybe it's more of a concern for me. I don't know if he's just going to take a month or so off, but we'll see.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what that situation is going to bring.
Yeah, exactly. So as we get ready to wrap up, we got to go through and make our pick'ems for this week. Unfortunately, no Austin this week, but quick update for you guys in our pick'em challenge here. So sitting in first place, myself at 47 and 33, Hobbs 3 games behind at 44 and 36, and then trailing Austin at 40 and 40, 500 on the pick'em season so far. So you're coming close there for a little bit, then edged out, pulled away by 3 games. So, still a lot of college football pick'ems left to go to see which one of us ends up coming out on top this season. But we kick off this week with Ole Miss headed over to Norman, Oklahoma. 6-1 Ole Miss coming off their first loss last week against Georgia on the road. Oklahoma coming off a 26-7 win over South Carolina, bouncing back after their loss against Texas. Spread opens up for this game in favor of the home team, Oklahoma, by 5.5. Does Kiffin and the Rebels bounce back this week, or does Oklahoma get back on, that winning track that they had before Mateer went out? They lost to Texas and whatnot.
I mean, I want to pick Ole Miss, but it's on the road, and it's kind of even to me. These two teams are kind of similar to me as far as, so anytime you got a matchup like this, I'm going to go with the home team. So, Oklahoma.
Yeah, looking at this, my question in this game is, it goes back to 2 weeks ago against Texas, is, truly how healthy is John Mateer? Because you saw him really struggle against Texas. You see last week against Oklahoma, he throws for 150 yards, touchdown. They rush for 100 yards. Is that hand injury really behind him? Is he going to be, the same old Mateer that we saw, a Heisman favorite type of player? And he bounced back last week getting that win over South Carolina. And I'm like you, Kiffin, and it's hard to bet against this Kiffin offense. You got the defensive mind of Venerables in Oklahoma. It's a tough one. It's a close matchup, but I didn't think they would do it last week on the road just because it's always tough to win at Georgia. But Oklahoma still has a lot to prove. So give me Ole Miss on the road to get the win here.
All right. I mean, it's one of those that can go either way. We'll find out at 11 on Saturday.
Yeah. Next up, we jump over to the American Conference, a game of 2 interesting teams. South Florida, that has kind of came out of nowhere this year, 6-1 on the season, ranked 18th. Memphis 6-1, losing to UAB last week. I don't think anybody saw that coming. South Florida coming off 4 straight wins after a loss against Miami, and then beating Florida this season as well. Alex Golish, a guy that's been rumored for several coaching jobs, Arkansas, potentially Auburn if they fire Hugh Freeze. This game's going to be in Memphis. Spread is set for favoring South Florida by 6.5 as the road team. Can Memphis bounce back after a shocking loss last week, or does South Florida, the Bulls, continue to roll? This game is could be close. It could determine who gets that power of five, group of five slot in the playoffs.
Listen, I know Memphis beat us, but they haven't really impressed me that much. I felt like they were kind of due for a bad game. I felt like they can get a little bit stale on offense, and that happened in the first half against us. Problem is we couldn't do nothing in the second half on offense, so they came back and beat us. So I'm going to go with South Florida. They've been rolling. They've beaten everybody they played like they stole something. So I'll go with South Florida.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, especially the thing to consider for Memphis in this game is their starting quarterback Brendan Lewis, whether he's going to play or not this week, because he left the UAB game with a lower body injury. Ryan Silverfield, Memphis's coach, said that he's day to day, and so with that question mark up in the air, I'm kind of leaning your way. What USF has done this year, Golish is setting himself up to, move on after this season. You would think if things continue in the trajectory that they're headed. So I'm with you. Give me USF in this one. What they've done this year has been short of, pretty spectacular. So we jump back over to the SEC as Missouri is headed to Nashville to take on Vandy. Both teams 6-1. Both teams ranked in the top 15. Missouri at 15, Vandy at 10. Missouri coming off that double overtime win against Auburn. Vandy coming off the win against LSU. This is, like we've said it before, this is not your grandparents' Vandy that hasn't been good at football for a long time. And Clark Lee even addressed that this week and said, we're not the Vandy that you expect, and we don't care. So Vanderbilt's favored by 2.5 in this game. I doubted them last week against LSU, and I'll go ahead and say I'm taking Vandy in this one. I've watched them this entire season. They played a close one in Alabama. I doubted them last week. I said, okay, this is going to be a tough test for them. LSU, they came out and got the win there. So, I'm going Vandy in this one.
Yeah, this one isn't even a second thought. Vanderbilt easily in this one. And Missouri's not a top 15 team. They're not good. If Vanderbilt keeps up their trajectory and continues to win games like that, they're going to the playoff. So Missouri is not good. They have played nobody. The only team they played, they lost to. And that was at home. They haven't had to go on the road and play anybody worth any. I mean, Auburn, like we've heard the struggles they've been having. Man, this could be a big-time blowout.
Yeah, I agree. So we jump over to the Big 12, where we have BYU headed to Ames, Iowa. BYU 7-0, ranked 11th. Iowa State 5-2. BYU coming off that, close win against Utah last week. Iowa State coming off 2 straight losses to Cincinnati and Colorado, both those games on the road, so they come back home for this one. Spread for this game is set 2.5 in favor of Iowa State. But this one's an interesting matchup, and I guess maybe it's because they're a home team, but to see Iowa State in favor, then this one is surprising for me.
Well, I want to pick Iowa State because they're at home, and BYU to me has not been impressive enough to just say, oh, BYU's going to win this thing. I picked Utah last week. They barely lost a game. BYU just they're skinning by everybody they played. They went to 2 overtimes on the road at Arizona. They barely beat West Virginia, who lost to Ohio early in the year. Barely beat Colorado. It's just they're not really very impressive. So it makes me want to pick Iowa State, but when you look at Iowa State, they're not very impressive either. So it's just like, I don't know. This right here is just a toss up, and I guess I'll go with BYU. That's what I'm going to put down.
I was about to say, with what they've done, what the program they built, they probably lack a quarterback this year.
Yeah.
What they've done has been, like you said, skin and by, but they're still finding ways to do it.
Yeah.
So, give me BYU, even though they're on the road. I'm going to take them to go into Iowa State and get the win.
This will be the game that Iowa State takes that I picked them in that they don't take all year. So I'm sure.
Right. As we stay over in the Big Ten, Illinois, 5-2 on the season, is headed to Seattle, Washington to take on the Washington Huskies. Both these teams 5-2. Illinois ranked 23rd. Illinois coming off that loss 34-16 to Ohio State. Washington coming off a 24-7 loss against Michigan. Both these teams looking for a bounce back week. Spread is 4.5 in favor of Washington. Are you taking Brett Bielema or are you going to take the Huskies?
So I've liked Illinois all year. I think they're a very sound football team. They don't turn the ball over. Their quarterback is very, very good with the football. I think he's got 13 touchdowns to 1 interception. I've liked Illinois. They play good football. But on the flip side, Washington, I like them too. I think their offense is very good. It's hard this is another one of those games where I'm looking at it and I go back to my rule of thumb. I'm gonna go with the team that's at home. I mean, that's what is what I'm gonna go with. Even though I think Illinois could win this football game, I'll go with Washington because it's in Washington.
Yeah, this is one of those toss-up games. Like we said, you see the spread only at 4.5, so you're less than a touchdown. You got to think that favors the home team. I'm right there with you. I've liked what Illinois has done, but it's hard to go against the home team. And when you have teams that are very close to each other, you've got to go with the home team there. Continuing on in the Big Ten, the Minnesota Golden Gophers headed to Iowa City, Iowa to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Both these teams 5-2, 3-1 in the Big Ten. Minnesota coming off that big win over Nebraska 24-6. Iowa coming off that close win against Penn State 25-24. Spread for this game is set in favor of Iowa, the home team, by 7.5. As we talked about it before, former Fayetteville Bulldog Drake Lindsay leading this Minnesota team, on the season so far, over 1,400 yards passing, 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, with PJ Fleck leading the way with Minnesota. So who do you got in this one?
I really want to pick Minnesota because Iowa's offense is just horrible. I mean, their quarterback has more interceptions than he does touchdowns. I don't know. Like, Iowa just does not impress me. But it's at Iowa and Minnesota. When I look at Minnesota here, they have not performed well on the road. I mean, they got the doors beat off of them. They beat Wisconsin. Well, I'm sorry, that's Minnesota. They got the brakes beat off of them at Ohio State, which most people do. And then they lost at California, which I think that was a 9:30 at night game. Anyways, they may have something to do with it, but they've gotten some big wins at home. But this one's on the road. Iowa seems to just, for some reason, win games that close games at home. I'll go with Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa on that tough defense. We historically, Iowa's known for their defenses and then having really good tight ends. So, I'm like you, Minnesota. I want to pick them, but like you said, the record away from home this year. Iowa's defense, they're playing in Iowa. I'm like you. I'm going to go with the home team here to take the win. As we continue on here, you jump over to the Mountain West with San Diego State headed to Fresno, California to take on the Fresno State Bulldogs. Both these teams, San Diego State 5-1, Fresno State 5-2. Both teams, 2 wins in conference. You've got San Diego State coming off a win 44-10 at Nevada. Fresno State coming off of a loss against Colorado State 49-21. Spread for this game 2.5 in favor of the road team, San Diego State. Who you got in this one?
Look, man, Fresno State you know, I just look these stats when you're 7 games into the season, stats are very telling. Their quarterback is throwing 9 interceptions in 7 games. So it's like you're going to turn the ball over and look at San Diego State, man. They're just walloping their opponents. I mean, they had a close win, 6-3 game, which is very interesting. But that's at Northern Illinois, and we know Northern Illinois is a pretty tough cookie to crack. I mean, they went into Notre Dame and won last year. And then this San Diego State's only loss was at Washington State. We just saw them take Ole Miss to the wire. So I'm going to have to go with San Diego State in this one.
Yeah, you look at it, like you said, stats are telling you. Look at the stats, and you know what San Diego State's done. I'm with you there. I'm following Vegas and the odds set there. I'm going to take San Diego State.
Yeah.
You jump on over to the Big 12. You got Baylor 4-3, Cincinnati 6-1, ranked 21st. This game is going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio. Both these teams. You look at Baylor coming off that loss against TCU. Cincinnati coming off of win against Oklahoma State. Spread set at 3.5 in favor of the home team, Cincinnati. Baylor's been that up and down, team this year. You look at their quarterback, though. He puts up the numbers, over 2,300 yards passing this year with 21 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Yep. So, incredible passing there, but still, not able to get it done as they're 4-3, 2-2 in conference play this year. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts are I'm going to go back to the same preaching the choir, man. You look at the stats of Sawyer Robinson at Baylor, man, putting up crazy numbers, but he's a gunslinger. He's reminds me of Brett Favre. He's going to throw some interceptions, but he's going to make some plays. And then you look at Cincinnati's quarterback, 18 touchdowns and 1 pick. So he's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to play it safe. So Baylor's played a lot of those high-scoring games where they end up losing. So, I mean, if that's been the story of the year for them, I'm going to go with the same story. It'll be another high-scoring game where they barely lose, and I'll take Cincinnati.
Yeah, give me the Bearcats as well to continue on here. Like you said, I love what Robertson's been doing, throwing the ball. That those numbers are incredible, but they're still not resulting in wins. And so until they can come close and win some of those shootout games that they have, I'm gonna go with Cincinnati. We jump back over to the SEC. A&M, as we saw last week, 7-0, ranked 3rd in the country somehow. I don't think they're that good, but, who am I to talk about that? Headed down to Baton Rouge to play them at 6:30, a night game in Baton Rouge. As we know, LSU coming off that loss to Vanderbilt, wanting some revenge. In this one, the spread is favoring A&M, coming in favored by 2.5. Marcel Reed, very similar to Talon in his style of play, just a little bit shorter. Nussmeier, this LSU offense has not been impressive all year. They've got a decent defense, but they struggle to score points. You look at Nussmeier, 11 touchdowns to 5 interceptions on the season. Marcel Reed, 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. This is a big game in the SEC, especially for A&M as they look to stay undefeated, number 3 in the country, night game, Death Valley. What do you think?
Look, man, I've seen very few teams. I don't got to look at stats on this. I'm going off of what I've seen in my lifetime. I've seen very few teams go into Death Valley at night and come out alive. So give me LSU. And I'm not impressed by A&M. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, when you have and I know it's the defense, but you have 2-5 Arkansas hang over 500 yards and 42 points on you.
And then Mississippi State almost got them.
Yeah.
I mean, Mississippi State's a very improved team from last year, but they're winning a lot of close games. I mean, it's just not a dominating team so I'll take the atmosphere in Baton Rouge to shake them up a little bit. and LSU finds a way.
I was about to say, I'm going to agree with you. Brian Kelly comes back home. He's got tremendous pressure on him. This LSU team isn't going to want to, lay down after getting beat by Vanderbilt. I mean, yes, they're not your old Vanderbilt, but you're not going to want to let that define your season. So, yeah, hopefully LSU can come back. I wish both teams could lose in this matchup, but if I had to root for somebody, I'm going to pick LSU in this one.
I will not be watching these two play ever. I'll look at the score, but I would die watching those two play. That sounds miserable.
All right, and to wrap us up, they picked a good one. We jump over to the MVFC and North Dakota, South Dakota, a historic rivalry between those two schools for championships at their level. Both these teams 7-0, 3-0, 4-0 in conference. Both teams coming off wins. You have North Dakota that's, they're undefeated on the season. South Dakota's undefeated on the season. The Bison, the Jackrabbits, spreading this game. It's going to be a fun one to watch. What's your thoughts on this one?
My thoughts are, what are they doing, man? Yeah, it's cool. They're both 7-0, North, South. We know how good they are in their respective division. But, man, put Arkansas or Auburn in there. Like, we got other games we could pick from. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. It's a coin flip. They're both 7-0, and there's a big-time rivalry, and we know both how good they are. And I'll just go with North Dakota State, I guess, because it's whatever, Like, I won't be, we'll see.
Well, and it's crazier too. You look at it, both quarterbacks, both 11 touchdowns, both 1 interception.
Yeah, who knows, man? Like, I'm gonna go with North Dakota State because they produced an NFL quarterback for her. I don't know, man. Like,
produced one, but one that yeah,
and one that's playing terrible tonight. But
yeah. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bison as well. The Jackrabbits. That's always a fun matchup. At the that they've had, but so we'll see what Austin's picks are, and see see if he can make a run at coming back in the leaderboard there.
Ours are pretty similar this week. So
I was about to say, yeah, we don't have too many different picks, so
he's
it's going to be see what Austin does to catch up.
He's not going to be catching up this week,
right? He's going to have to take some of those long shots there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. With that, good show tonight. Got to talk with Blake from Auburn to get his perspective. As we get ready to wrap up, you got anything else before we get out of here?
No, next show I'm on, next Thursday we'll be
talking about Mississippi State.
30th, we'll probably be close to previewing the opening tip-off. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
So, with that, we're going to get ready to wrap up here. Don't forget to like and subscribe the show. Like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, App Podcast, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Like us across social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All across there. And we're gonna get ready to wrap up here. Everybody have a great Friday. We got basketball tomorrow, football Saturday, and then we'll have basketball again on Monday before we know it. And like Hobbs said, November 3rd tip off to begin the official season. So it's going to be a fun, jam-packed weekend. I'm ready for it. And so for Hobbs, myself, we're going to get ready to wrap up and get out of here. Everybody have a great weekend. Have a great Friday. And we'll see you right back here on Sunday for your Razor recap.